I came across an interesting post on the Peerism user forum. This user was able to run Ambox from within the x86 64 VM build of PeerOS plus Phosh. For those that don't know, Ambox is a way of running Android applications from standard GNU Linux. It uses Snap for isolation, although security is still a work in progress for Ambox ARM64. And of course, the desire to run Android applications on the dev kit is quite high. Even I would love to run my bank app, and I'm sure others would love WhatsApp and some other messaging clients. I went ahead and started researching what it would take to run Ambox on the Librem 5. It looks like a lot of work to bring Ambox to ARM64 is already done, which is very good news. And I was able to find a compiled version of Ambox for ARM64. So I tried installing Snap. Unfortunately, this gave me a squashfs error. I went over to the Matrix channel and complained to the devs, and they had a pretty good idea what was going on. They enabled squashfs exe in the kernel, and all I had to do was update my dev kit, and I was able to pull down this change. The error message was completely different, this time complaining about cgroup's freezer. I was able to find this crappy hackaround, which involved copying sysfs cgroups from a running desktop and using mount-rbind, which did work but was quite ugly and clearly not the right solution. DPA had a much better plan to fix this and also gave me updated kernel build directions. So I built a kernel with config cgroup freezer enabled and installed it to the dev kit. With working snaps, I took a stab at installing the pre-compiled Ambox. I did manage to build Ambox in an ARM64 emulator, but it worked less well than the one I found here. Now that Ambox is installed, all I need to do is install the kernel modules. Unfortunately, building the kernel modules failed. It turns out this was because the kernel was built on my x86 64 computer, which built some of the items as x86 so that they could be used to build the rest of the kernel. I was able to rebuild the kernel scripts on the dev kit, and the kernel modules did compile after that, but they wouldn't load. The only thing I could think to do was build the kernel on something ARM64, like the dev kit. That did seem to fix the issue. I can now install the modules without issue, and I can even access an Android shell. When I click on the icon, I get this pretty interface, but it does eventually error out saying Session Manager failed to become ready. Running the Session Manager from the serial connection segfaults. When you run the Session Manager from within the GUI, you can see it complains about libegl and some other graphics stuff. If you leave the Session Manager running in this way, Ambox still errors out with Session Manager failed to become ready. That's all the progress I have been able to make so far on Ambox. At the very least, snaps will soon work by default on the Librem 5 phone. With the community soon to receive hardware, I'm sure we'll have this up and running very soon. Just for fun, I installed a few extra applications. The usage app looks quite beautiful. It gives you a CPU utilization graph, as well as which applications are using RAM and the most processing power. It also gives you a simple way to track down which folders are using up all your disk space. Very handy if you're running low on space. The only critique I have is the CPU graph itself is quite CPU intensive. As soon as you scroll down past that graph, it drops considerably as far as total power to run the usage application. Not much has changed for the update GUI, but they did add a cool reboot fade-out effect. Also, after the reboot, I did get a notification. Tapping on it brought me to an update report. Very cool. The disk utility app also looks very good on a small form factor. Thanks for watching. Bye.